Hello, hello, lovely, and welcome back to another episode of Loving Life with Court. I am so happy you are here. I have spent about a week and a half out of the studio, not recording. I haven't been really putting out that much content. And for most of the times that this happens, where I take a little bit of a break, I am so filled with just stress, wanting to show up and stay consistent. But I felt like it was the perfect time to rest before I burnt out. And it was just so blissful. It was awesome. I knew that I needed a break. My body and my mind were just telling me it's time to take a break. And I listened before I crashed. And it was just so awesome. I had my birthday. I turned 25. So we're going to be talking a little bit about that today. I had a post-wedding wedding. So my husband and I eloped a few months ago and we got to celebrate with our family 2 weekends ago. So it's just been a very high point of my life. And I felt like, you know what, it's time to disconnect. It's time to just be really present and be as present as I can in my environment and with the people I'm surrounded by who I love. And now I'm ready to come back to the other ones that I love, including you, and dive into a new episode. We've also started a new season. So this is episode 2 of the new season of Loving Life with Court. We have rebranded for anybody that's been here for a little while. There's a lot of changes going on, and I cannot wait to share with you all of the things I have in the making. But without further ado, let's get started on today's episode. So today we are talking about a life that is loved, but today I miss who I used to be. This is something that I used to say to myself so much. I miss who I used to be. I miss the high school me. I miss how my body used to look. I miss how I used to act. I miss how I used to view life. I miss how I used to be so carefree. This was something that was so constant for me. It was just a part of my language. And I spent most of my time in life looking in the past, daydreaming about interactions that I had, opportunities and events that I got to experience. And I wasn't looking at it in a positive way that I wanted to. I was looking at it in a way of just genuinely missing and mourning that part of my life. Now, if you've been following along in the past few episodes, we have really been talking about embracing a more optimistic view on life. And what this means is not just knowing what optimism means, but living optimistically. And a great component of that is knowing that there's always greater things coming. There's always a light at the end of the tunnel. We just don't know when that is sometimes. And that's what can be so difficult when we have times of our life that are just a bit darker, that we are maybe in a state of depression and missing the times in your life where you were really excelling and doing good. So that's what we're going to be building off today, is continuing this perspective of optimism and understanding that the past is the past. There are so many amazing things that are going to be coming ahead for you. But when you are so stuck and feel like you're drowning in good memories and that you just don't have anything tangible for you right now, it's hard to realize that there's so many amazing things coming. So that's exactly what we're going to talk about today and work through together. When you fall guilty to saying, I miss who I used to be, the first thing to understand is that you don't necessarily miss those experiences, but you miss the feelings that those experiences brought you, especially if a lot of those experiences are tied to a much younger version of you. It may have been a while since you've had feelings of carefree or, just going with the flow, living high on life, especially when you are possibly in a state of your life where things just feel overwhelming. You don't know what to do next. You have a lot of responsibilities. There's a big difference between teenage you and who you are now. But one thing I can tell you is that if you have felt them before, that is confirmation that you are capable of feeling them again. But how do we get there? This is the first year that I have not spent my birthday mourning the younger version of me. I just turned 25 a few days ago. And although for many, 25 is very young, I feel like it's very young. But I feel like the 20s, you mourn so much. There is just such a dark cloud that I don't think a lot of us have the opportunity to speak about, especially when you're talking to people that are older than you and they're like, the 20s are the best part of your life. But the 20s kind of like slap you in the fucking face. And what many people I think forget when they're out of their 20s is that it's a very much a time of feeling lost. You really need some form of direction and you don't know who to go to, where to go, what to do. And what I have learned along this journey is that I need to turn inward, which is a whole other tangent that we can go on. But where I'm kind of going with this is that I have spent from the age of turning 20 up 21, 22, 23, all of that time, I mourn who I could be. I mourn who I was. I feel like I'm not doing enough. I feel like I'm not successful enough. I compare myself. And this is the first year that I have just been practicing so much gratitude. I feel like I finally am getting my shit together, not in the sense of I know what I'm doing with my life, but I feel more confident in really letting go of the wheel and seeing where life takes me. And that kind of feeling is the same feeling that I was constantly chasing when I thought back to me as a younger version, missing who I used to be. Just feeling like things are fun, things are light, and things are just going to work out. But it's so hard to get there again. So let's continue to follow along this journey together on how we can get there. So what I've realized in the past year, maybe, I'm not too sure if it was a conscious decision or realization, but what I've realized looking back now is that I, for a long time, missed how I felt before I realized the trauma or hardships that I'd endured. I missed how I felt before I'd realized how hard the world could be on me. And I mourned not fully living my childhood out, if that makes sense. And I hope you're following along with me. But so what I did to kind of understand this journey of me mourning a younger version of myself is I mapped out kind of exactly what my life has looked like. And I think a lot of you can resonate with. And number one is being a kid. That was the start of my journey. And everything I could ever be was possible. I had ample confidence. I knew that I was capable of doing anything and nobody can bring me down. And then I started getting glimpses of reality, many people would say, where I endured hardships, that my consciousness, that my brain at the time was not able to fully understand or cope with. So what do we do at this time? We just continue to push through things. We try to balance being a kid, but also dealing with this trauma that most likely is just suppressed until you're older. That's how it was for me. And then number 3, living for the day. I was carefree and everything was blank spaces ahead. And this was my teenage years. This was the years that I so-called mourned or missed being. And number 4 was having to make the most important decision of my life at a time where my brain was just beginning to dissect my childhood and learn how to cope with emotions. And this is what all of us are put into, this situation of, okay, you're about to graduate high school and it's time to figure out what the fuck you want to do for the rest of your life. Oh yeah, but if you've had any trauma, which all of us do, or if you've had any hardships throughout your life, you're also going to want to deal with all of those during this time because it's all going to come to the surface. But at the same time, make sure you have all your shit together. And those kinds of expectations are like a freaking slap in the face. So I'm sure we can all relate on that part of the journey. And also, we're meant to do this when parts of our brain, including the prefrontal cortex, that is responsible for decision making and behaviors, is not fully developed until 25. So we are having all of these expectations on us when our brain is not even fully developed. And we have to make a full-on fucking decision on what we're going to do for the rest of our life. Now, number 6 is fight and flight kicks in. And this is for me something that kicked in very early in my life, not during post-secondary or in my late teenage years. For some, it doesn't. For some, it does. But it was most prominent when I was doing that transition from high school to post-secondary. And my fight and flight was just fucking on all time. And now I'm responding to every situation and stress. My body, my mind are just completely kerfuffled. And this brings me to hitting rock bottom emotionally and physically and not knowing what the fuck to do. So these are where things took a turn, but not before I had fallen into a rut of, I miss who I used to be. I miss how I used to be. I miss what my life used to look like. But like I said, you don't miss who you were. You miss the feelings that you felt during that time of your life. And I want you to keep in mind that everybody's life is difficult no matter what. And when you are young, there are hardships that you endure, but we all kind of have a point in our life that was easier, no matter if an easy life for you can be a challenging life for others. Typically, the life that we miss is the easiest version of our life. So now let's bring it back up. So I hit rock bottom emotionally and physically. I know at the time, to give you some more context, I weighed 250 pounds. I just had no love for life. I was just pushing through day to day, responding to situations not in the best way possible. I was essentially my own rumbling volcano, and the volcano bursted, and I was like, what am I going to do? So I decided I needed to learn how to care for myself before I could expect that from someone else. So I started taking care of my own body. I started prioritizing my own mental health. I figured out what was going to kind of get me on my next path, which was leaning into my spirituality. Every person's journey is a little bit different, but why did I do this? Why did I realize that I needed to learn how to care for myself before expecting others to do that? So I could teach the ones that I love how to make me feel safe, which in turn does the same for them. And I'll give you an example. I become very overstimulated quite easily. And when I get to that point, the first thing that I'll do, especially when I'm around the people that I love, is I just blow up. Either that's crying, that's going off about how the house is a mess, shutting down. Like blowing up for me, it can kind of vary. But the most common is just nagging on my husband. And I'm very aware of that and I'm working on it. And this is what's helped me work through it is I was nagging on my husband, expecting him to be able to regulate my emotions when I had no idea how to regulate them myself. So what happens to a lot of us is people say, get your support system, go find your support system. And that's how things will help you, finding your people. But how are you supposed to find your support system when you don't even know how to support yourself? That is like the basis, like the baseline of it. So what I started doing is when I had become very overstimulated, I would figure out why. I would ask myself why, until I got to the root answer. Whenever I had something that I needed to work through and deal with, and largely was correlated to me, missing my old life because it was just the things that I was dealing with was too hard to handle. I started going back into that why. Why am I feeling this way? Why am I allowing this to rule my entire body? Why am I stressed right now? Why do I feel like I need to be in fight and flight? And by doing that, I was able to understand, what do I need right now? So when I was overstimulated, why am I overstimulated? Well, the house is a mess. Why am I projecting that onto my husband? Because I feel like I don't have any help. Why do you feel like you don't have any help? Because you don't speak to him and tell him what you need. What do you need to do? I need to calmly approach him and ask him to help me with these few things instead of blowing up on him, creating a stressful environment, not getting anywhere. So that's what I do. I would recognize what I was feeling, and I still do that, and it's still a work in progress. Recognize what I'm feeling, figure out why, what can I do, what kind of action can I take, and how can I communicate that to the ones I love. And when I was able to do that, what happened is that I was also creating a safe space for my husband. Because when I am at 100, what does that do? It creates a stressful environment and affects the people within that environment. So by me staying calm, he was then able to more often understand what I needed before I could even vocalize it, and created the safe haven that many of us, I'm sure, did not have during childhood. And that is where we drown in, I miss who I used to be, because you no longer have a safe haven where you can just be you, whatever it is. And maybe you still didn't even have that as a child, but there are glimpses of your life where you were provided a safe space, a safe environment, a safe person. So that's what you're missing. You're missing that feeling of safety and security, and that carefree is really just embracing who you are. And that leads me to my last point of when we are in that safe environment or a safe space, we create more space in our mind for creating a clear idea of what we want in life. So really, this is all getting to the point of you don't miss who you used to be. You have a really big blockage and you got to work through it. Because I can frickin' promise you that you tap into that child who is ready to decide who she wants to be or who he wants to be. And everything will be like, you know that saying, your ducks are in your row? Those ducks will come fucking flying out in a perfect row. And that doesn't mean that you're going to know exactly what you want to do next, but it will give you clarity on knowing that you're ready to do something next. And when you become ready, then opportunities come up. And then when opportunities come up, you begin to live a life that you love. And when you're living the life that you love, you no longer look in the past, but you understand that there is so much potential in your future because you are thinking about who that person used to be, but you have no idea what that person is capable of being. So that's today's episode. I love you all so much, and a friendly reminder to not only be kind to others, but also to your beautiful, amazing self.